You can listen to the Canadian Gothic early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are listening to Canadian Gothic.
Hello, listeners. Tonight's story is going to take us back to the summer of 1996. We're going to be following along with the bizarre and tragic odyssey of Blair Adams. For reasons no one has yet been able to understand, Blair left his home in Surrey, British Columbia, and set off on a frantic and confused journey that ended just days later, with his partially clothed body being found in a parking lot in Knoxville, Tennessee. Scattered around him were thousands of dollars in American, Canadian, and German cash, some gold bars, some jewelry, and a whole bunch of unanswered questions. So let's get into it here. I'm Jordan, this is the Canadian Gothic, and tonight, Madeleine Klein and I will retrace Blair's final days, explore the haunting evidence he left behind, and consider what factors may have led to the bizarre and unsolved murder of Blair Adams.
Strangers found him, half-dressed and battered, in a parking lot on a gray July morning in 1996. Scattered around the body was a mix of German, Canadian, and U.S. currency totaling some $4,000. His wallet was intact, and its contents identified him as 31-year-old Blair Adams of Surrey, British Columbia in Western Canada.
Every aspect of this case is mysterious. There's no logical explanation for anything he did.
We can't come up for a reasoning for him to be here. We can't come up for a reason for him to leave Canada. Nobody knew he was going to take this trip. Nobody.
Miss Madeleine Klein, it's almost October. It's almost 2026.
Which is bizarre because we still can't teleport places. I was just thinking about this.
So unfair.
I remain disgusted that it's almost 2026 and I'm still driving to work like a peasant.
Yeah. Are you excited for Halloween, though? That's just around the corner.
I am actually. I'm excited because my kid's going to be a little bit more fun this year. We can do a little bit of trick-or-treating, but also my friend is having a murder mystery party, and I've always wanted to go to one of these. So I'm like double excited about this year.
Okay. As a true crime podcaster, you better go in and represent.
I know.
You better solve that case.
I'm hell-bent. I'm like, this isn't going to be fun for anyone else.
I've never done one either. I would love to. That would be a blast. Let me know how it goes. Let us know how it goes. We'll have something interesting to talk about. With Halloween coming, I get very into the haunted, the spooky, the paranormal. So at the top of the show here, I just want to call out to any listeners of the Canadian Gothic who think they've seen a ghost or been inside a haunted house or maybe thought they got bit by a vampire. Go to thecanadiangothic.com/contact and share your spooky story with us because I'm going to be working on the 2025 listener-contributed ghost story Halloween special. Let this be your call out to go take part in that. And Madeleine, I hope you'll host it with me.
Oh, I will be there with bells on. You know that.
I'm excited. But we're not getting into the paranormal or the spooky tonight, but we're certainly getting into a story that is as weird as it is unexpected as it is bizarre. This is one of the stranger Canadian cases I've come upon. Did you know anything about this story before we decided to talk about it here?
Never. Like, it didn't even ring any bells. But when I did finally read about it, it's just so bizarre and like tragic, and it's truly the epitome of a cold case. Like, it's just, there's so many questions and no answers.
And it's an example in my mind of someone just kind of falling through the cracks of our mental health system. I guess not everyone is going to see this as a mental health story, but to me, it seems as clear as day it seems as clear as day that this guy, Blair Adams, was going through something, and that something led him down to the United States and put him in a position to be murdered with a bunch of gold bars and cash and a trail of bizarre little appearances along the way in the lead up to it.
Right. It was the perfect storm because there's undeniably a mental health aspect to this story, but no suicide. So it's a series of unfortunate events that all coincidentally fell into place.
Yeah. Well, let's start at the beginning with who is Blair Adams. So a little bit about him. He grew up in Surrey, BC, born in 1964, And his background is it's one of those situations where you're going to hear from a lot of people who will say the nicest guy you've ever met, lit up the room, was reliable and dependable. And that seems to be one part of Blair Adams, but it also seems pretty clear that he struggled, at least during his 20s, with substance abuse and alcoholism. He had a bit of a rough background, but at the same time, as I said, seems to be a great guy aside from those struggles.
Well, what I noticed about the very limited information we get about his history is like what we have to remember is this is a super quick gloss over, and like your 20s is 10 years long, and we're missing a lot of information from different people.
Yeah, it is true.
Different people are going to have a different experience with him. He could be great and he could be angry.
What can't be denied, though, is he did have a criminal record, mostly with charges related to substance abuse or like assault related in some way to substance abuse and alcoholism. So he had a rough patch in his 20s, but in the lead up to the main part of the story we're going to be discussing, he did seem to begin the steps to getting his life on track. Just before his 30th birthday, he stopped drinking and he started attending weekly Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And it seems like for the remainder of his life, he stays sober. So that he does seem to put that behind him.
Right. And his 30th birthday would have been in 1994. And this takes place in 1996, which means he was sober for like 2 years.
Yeah. And those 2 years were busy. So he gets sober around his 30th birthday. He gets a job. He's working for his stepfather's construction company. His stepfather seems to own a large construction company that's not only working and doing work in British Columbia, but they're also working on projects around the world. Blair starts working for the company in BC, but not long after that, he transfers to Germany, and he's working on a construction project managed by his stepfather's company while living in Frankfurt, Germany. We just briefly talked about him having a troubled background, but in Germany, it seemed to work out there. He was working, he met a girl and started a long-term relationship that will continue up until the point of his murder. And for the most part, during his time there, things seemed to go well.
And to his credit, he stayed sober through that.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of beer in Germany.
Yeah.
So that's you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, like if you're someone who struggles with addiction, the stress of moving and taking a job in another part of the world, you think, yeah, and you're meeting all these new people on the job site and stuff. They're going for a pint after work. I could, that would be a challenge, and he made it work. But that said, he did have some issues with coworkers. We talked about how some people said he was a gentleman and a calm, patient guy. Others described him as volatile. He did have quite a few disagreements with other workers on the construction site. And it was said that there was more than once those disagreements became physical. It was said he got in quite a few fights. And I don't know if that's normal in construction work. I've never worked anywhere where people got in fights. But maybe on a construction site in Germany, that's a normal thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's see, I'm pretty lucky right now, but in the past I have worked with some idiots that I would have liked to fight.
You did the bar scene though. For me,
yes.
It was most of my work is like offices. So my vision of what work is like usually involves there's an HR person on scene and everyone is at their desk and stuff. I've never done like the restaurant, the bar, the construction site. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience to pull from to understand what it was like working for your stepfather's construction company in Germany and getting in fights with others. But in Blair Adams' case, he was there for a little over a year in Germany. I couldn't find an answer for why, but he did end up returning back to Canada. He left his girlfriend in Germany, but they did stay together and their relationship became a long-distance relationship. He came back to Canada from Germany and continued to work construction, continued to stay sober, and continued to take part in Alcoholics Anonymous. No explanation for why he made that change, though, but I think I can understand why you would want to get home after working a year abroad.
Well, I imagine the project finished up and they were shipped back home.
Yeah.
That's construction, baby.
I didn't even consider that.
But this like topic really interests me because like maybe it really truly comes down to it's not what you know, it's who you know, because what is a construction company from Surrey, BC, why are they getting hired in Frankfurt,
Yeah.
Germany? Like it seems so left field, but whatever.
It worked, but
it worked out. Yeah.
So we're now getting to just leading into 1996, which is the year he will be murdered. Blair Adams is 32 years old, back from his year in Germany, back in Surrey, BC, staying with his mother, who lives in Surrey, BC, and things are about to start getting weird. Let's take our first break, and when we get back, we're going to hear about some behavioral changes in Blair Adams that seem to put things in motion that will eventually lead to his tragic end. So at this point in the story, it's 1996. Blair Adams is back in British Columbia, still working for his stepfather's construction company, except now on a job within Canada. But things are starting to change, and it seems to almost happen overnight. Although Blair Adams remains sober, a lot of the behavioral changes that'll come about would make you question that. If it wasn't for tests, like drug tests that will come later in this story, I would have thought he got back into something, because it gets weird pretty quickly when he's back in Canada.
Well, that's how it reads. It's like it took a nosedive really fast.
Yeah. He's working on a construction site, but both his mother as well as coworkers describe him having mood swings, being agitated, being paranoid, and just not performing well at work. Just like a big part of construction work is like all the different safety protocols. And he seems to be dropping the ball left, right, and center, leaving things like, the main, in one instance was the main gate to the construction site. It was his job to make sure it was secured at the end of the day. He left the gate open. Just a bunch of like kind of careless little mistakes being made that made people think like, what's with Blair?
Well, he was also the foreman. So like that's a big job.
Yeah, the boss. But it's not just something that others are noticing. He's accepting it as well. There was one of his coworkers. Blair told him, like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Like, I don't know if I can go on here. He was struggling, not even just personally. Like, he was putting it out there that he was having a hard time. And I don't know a lot about the people that were around him, but it seems like it's at this point that whatever he falls off of, he's like slipping on the edge right now. And if something was going to prevent it, it would have to have happened at this part of the story, but it doesn't. It continues on.
He had a job, he traveled on occasion, had a history of several different girlfriends, was well-liked by virtually everyone that we've had contact with.
However, in the summer of 1996, Blair's cheery demeanor began to crack and buckle. Now his mood swung unpredictably from agitated paranoia to pensive withdrawal.
He abruptly quits his job without any notice, doesn't even pick up or cash his final paycheck. He just stops working and becomes a changed man who seems overcome by paranoia. He begins to express fear that people are talking about him behind his back. People are spreading rumors. And perhaps most unusual is he describes people he worked with in Germany are coming to get him. He needs to get out of here. I'm in trouble. They're going to get me. The folks from Germany.
Yeah, this, like the whole story's weird, but this is really where it gets hairy.
Yeah. Well, it just seems clearly that it is some kind of a mental break. He also stops attending AA meetings. So again, it reads as if he's just back on whatever substances he was addicted to. He's back drinking or doing whatever. That's how it reads, but it doesn't seem to be the case. This seems to be something within him that is changing at 32 years old, which is an odd time. Like when you hear of people having their first kind of throes of schizophrenia or something, often it's younger than this, early 20s is even like late teens. 32 is just kind of an odd time to have like a mental break that goes for a period of time. But it seems that is what happened.
But also, he was scared someone was going to kill him, and then he ended up killed.
Yeah, that's true, right?
So, was it a mental break? Were these fears, not unfounded?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. To his mother, who he was staying with, it was, I'm not doing well. But I don't want to talk about it. So he was a bit standoffish with her.
Something was obviously very much the matter. He hadn't been sleeping well. Something was wrong. I asked him numerous times what was wrong, and he said, "Oh, I don't think I should tell you about it." And to this day, I don't know what it is.
His girlfriend, who's still back in Germany, he was a bit more explicit with her, telling her that former coworkers were after him and were going to come and kill him. And he told the same thing to friends as well. So this was, clearly something that was taken over. And his way of dealing with it seemed to be to go on the run. In Blair Adams' version of On the Run, seems like a roll of the dice, disorganized mess that will put him in a position that harm is done to him. So let's go through kind of the timeline of what leads up to Blair's murder. This is all going to take place over a period of several days in July of 1996. We can start the timeline maybe with 5 days before he's murdered, on July 5th of 1996.
So on July 5th, Blair emptied his bank account and his safety deposit box, and he withdrew about $6,000 in cash, gold and platinum bars, coins, and jewelry. Was this normal in the 90s? Because I certainly don't have gold and platinum bars.
Yeah, people do. I don't know if it's normal in the 90s or normal now, but people invest in...
Do you have gold laying around?
No, I don't. I have some coins. My grandfather was a big coin collector, and he always gave me like gold and silver coins for my birthday growing up. So I do have in a safety deposit box a bunch of gold.
Oh.
So yeah, I guess I do.
Cool.
But what Blair withdrew, aside from cash, in multiple currencies, he had Canadian, American, and German cash. He also had like the gold and platinum bars, so he must have had some investment in, I guess you call it precious minerals or whatever, but he had that stuff probably in a safety deposit box. But all that to say, that's July 5th. July 7th, he makes his first of several attempts to cross the American border. So where he's living in Surrey, BC, he's not too far from the border that leads to near Seattle would be the first major city on the other side of the American border. On July 7th, in his vehicle, and we're going to talk about a few cars here, driving his own car, Blair drives to the American border with a bunch of cash, gold bars, platinum bars, probably a little disheveled and answering questions at the border in an odd way. The border services people ask him quite a few questions, and they eventually turn him away. They think the characteristics of Blair's border crossing to them appears to be that of someone who was maybe smuggling something across the border, drugs or something like that. They wouldn't let him across the border. They turned him away.
Yeah, and I should have done a little bit more research into this, but in 1996, I wonder if you needed a passport to cross the border.
This is before September 11th, of course. Things were definitely different, but you still would have done that experience that everyone goes through. You pull up to the border and they're like, what's your reason for traveling down here?
Right.
You got any money or whatever on you? And whatever it was about his attempted border crossing, he was said to be non-committal with his answers. So I think if they're like, what are you coming into the U.S. for? And you're like, they're like, no.
Get out, yeah.
We've heard enough. No, thank you.
Later we'll find out that he was successful in entering the United States, but it was after a couple tries. And that just that blew my mind because now your unsuccessful attempts would be documented on a computer, which whenever they scanned your ID, passport, whatever, would come up.
Yeah.
So there's no way something like that existed.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing now. Again, post September 11th, it was an incredible investment in all the different computer programs and such that would assist with, border security. So things changed big time not long after this happened. But as you said, this was his first of several attempts to cross the border. He tries on July 7th. They turn him away. He drives his car back to near Surrey. He actually goes to the Vancouver airport and he buys a return ticket to Frankfurt, Germany. He says he's planning to go visit his girlfriend there, but shortly after, he gets a refund. He doesn't actually get on a plane. His girlfriend had said she knew nothing about this potential visit, which is just, again, speaking to him having this kind of like thrashing about, I need to escape, disorganized plan.
All very chaotic.
Absolutely chaotic. And it's only going to get worse. He ends up going back to his mom's house, sleeps the night. July 8th, he gets started again. This time he drives his vehicle near the border, but he doesn't try to take his vehicle through the border. He gets out, like he parks his car and gets out and tries to walk across the border. This time he gets a hard time as well. But Border Services, rather than thinking he's a drug mule, they end up thinking he's involved in the theft of a vehicle. It turns out that he matches the description of a car that was stolen earlier in the day in Vancouver, and somehow the report of this stolen car makes its way to the Border Services. I guess where Vancouver's close enough to the border, it would make sense that they'd be notified, I guess, of a stolen car.
And the car was found abandoned near that border crossing.
Yeah, but which makes it look like he did it.
I'm not even convinced that he didn't.
But there's no evidence to charge him or anything, so they just let him leave.
Only circumstantial, because he had like scratches on his hands and legs.
Yeah, that's right.
Which makes me believe that he did indeed steal the vehicle.
When you actually, like, when you look at it and go through it, you're like, yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I think, like, what I'm thinking here is he doesn't want to try to get across the border in the same car that he was turned away in yesterday. Maybe he thought a stolen car would get him through it. But for whatever reason, he tries to walk across. It doesn't work. They turn him away. What he does then is he goes back to the Vancouver airport, the same spot he was the day prior. But this time, instead of buying a plane ticket to Frankfurt, Germany, what he does is he just goes and rents a car at the Vancouver. And he has to backtrack. Like, he leaves the border, goes back past Surrey to the Vancouver airport, rents a car, and he then makes his next, it's a Nissan Altima he's driving now. He uses that to make his third attempt to cross the border. Third
and final. So he must have picked a different border.
I think it was the same border every time.
Oh,
but like you said,
really?
at this point, pre 9/11 in 1996, he's tried three separate. Although it's the same person in the car, or it's the same person trying to cross the border. It's two different cars, and one of the attempts were on foot. Maybe he slipped through. And I think, like, when I try to cross, every time I've crossed the border into the U.S., like, I feel like they just kind of like, yeah, hey, how's it going? And let me through.
Me too.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe just the first two times he just came across as strange, because I'm sure the border guards, like, they can sense a weird vibe. And if they do, that's when they start asking questions. Maybe the third time he was just calm enough and gave them the right style and nod. And they're like, yeah, go through, buddy.
Yeah.
Driving a newer car.
Maybe. Yeah, I think it depends who you get. Because,
I'm sure that's a part of it.
I have a friend who was traveling, like, with his wife and family, and they were convinced he had pot in the car, and they, like, ripped his dashboard off. And he's like,
Jeez.
I don't have anything. So,
okay.
Yeah, it depends. Luck of the draw.
All right, so let's focus on the timeline here and specifically how it relates to cars. So in Vancouver, he rents this Nissan Altima. At the Vancouver airport, he rents the Nissan Altima, gets across the border with that, and he drives the car, that rented Nissan Altima, straight to the airport in Seattle. What he does when he gets to Seattle, goes to the airport there, and he buys a one-way ticket from Seattle to Washington, D.C. So basically just going, west to east across the United States. He leaves the rented Nissan Altima in the parking lot of the Seattle airport, buys this return ticket. Buys this one-way ticket and leaves the car behind. So obviously, like, that, you don't do that. You don't just ditch a rental car.
Well, you do it at an airport.
But would you go? Yeah, I guess that's a good point. If you were renting from one of those places, maybe they do have an office. But I think, as we will hear when we get going, he didn't drop the keys off, because those keys are going to be, of the rented Nissan Altima, are going to come into play.
Also worth noting, the one-way ticket was double the price of a return ticket.
The one-way ticket was odd because He paid about $770 for a one-way ticket when he could have purchased a round-trip ticket for approximately $350 or $400. So it would have been half the price for a round-trip ticket as he paid for a one-way ticket. It just seemed very unusual.
So I realized he wasn't in like the right state of mind, but the one-way ticket thing just tells me he wasn't planning on coming back.
And it also says he doesn't care about the money.
Right.
Yeah. So it's weird that would be the case. The return ticket would have been half the price as a one-way ticket. I'm surprised by that, but either way, he didn't care. He bought a one-way ticket from Seattle to Washington, D.C., and it's a mystery why he went there. There's nothing that would have been drawing him to Washington. He had, as far as anyone knows, there was no explanation for why he went across the country from Seattle to Washington on this one-way ticket. But he did, and things are only going to get stranger. He gets in Washington and rents yet another car. This is the third car in this story. He had the Nissan Altima from Vancouver, left that at the airport in Seattle, flies to Washington. Now he rents a Toyota Camry, gets in his rented Toyota Camry, and begins a 7-hour drive from the Washington, D.C. airport to Knoxville, Tennessee, of all places. Again, a mystery why he's ending up down here, but this will be the last stop on his, tragic trip to nowhere, as it will seem. So let's take our final break with Blair Adams driving a rented Toyota Camry to Knoxville, Tennessee. And when we get back, we'll hear what happens to him and we'll try to make sense of it. All right, Madeline, things are going to start happening really fast. It's now July 10th, and this will be Blair Adams' last known days. He's pulling in to Knoxville, Tennessee, and things are going to get weird. I don't believe Knoxville, Tennessee was his intended final stop, but he does stop for gas, and a weird thing happens here that I guess will speak to his mental state. He stops the car at a gas station, puts gas in his car, and then has trouble starting it.
This is bizarre. This is crazy.
He can't get the car to start. So he goes into the gas station and tells them, like, yeah, there's something wrong with my car. Like, could you call me, I don't know, a service person, a tow truck, or whatever? And they do call him a tow truck. And why don't you tell us what happens? Because this is strange.
So the tow truck shows up and the driver notices he couldn't start this rental car because he was trying to use the key from the Nissan Altima rental.
Yeah, he's using a Nissan key to try to start the Toyota Camry. And the tow truck driver's like, I think that's the wrong key, bud.
And yeah, apparently Blair was just like dumbfounded. And like the tow truck driver said, check your pockets. Like, if you drove this thing here, you have a key. It's somewhere. Like, but he didn't. He didn't check his pockets, or he did and said like, nothing.
I think the tow truck driver, I think, said he refused to check his pockets, which I can't, in my head, I can't allow that scene to play out. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what the tow truck driver says. So what they ended up settling on is the tow truck driver says, okay, I'll tow the truck. We'll park it at the lot or whatever until you figure this out. And Blair says, why don't you drop me off at a hotel? So he gets in the car with the tow truck driver. They drive the car, the rented Camry. They drop it at a lot somewhere. The tow truck driver drops Blair off at a hotel in Knoxville, Tennessee, with plans to meet up the next day to figure out the whole car situation. And the tow truck driver has gone on to describe this situation multiple times. He spoke to media. Of course, he speaks to the police in the days after. And he says, I don't know what was going on with that guy, but he clearly wasn't right in the head. He was acting strange and bizarre, and there was something wrong with this guy. And I think that's clear.
Well, and it's very kind of the tow truck driver to recognize him acting strange and paranoid and refusing to check his pockets for a key he clearly has, and still offer to give him a ride.
Yeah,
that's very kind.
I think like the tow truck driver, some people would, when what happens to Blair happens, as it's about to, a lot of people are looking like, how could this have been stopped, or what could have prevented this. Some people feel like the tow truck driver should have been the one to, like, call emergency services and get like mental health support or something. But I just think, like, of everybody, the tow truck drivers of this world aren't the people who are like on the front lines of dealing with mental health crisis.
No, absolutely not. And although mental health issues are not a new thing, the stigma around them is, or I should say, the acceptance and just the understanding of them is new.
The softening of the stigma surrounding them.
Thank you. In 1996,
it was a different world, right? Although it wasn't that long ago, it was a different world.
It was, and in so many different ways. And yeah, like that probably didn't even cross his mind. And even today, if this happened, no one could have guessed that the events coming would happen. Yeah.
So the tow truck driver drops the Camry off at the repair shop, drives Blair to a hotel. It's called the Fairfield Inn. Blair continues to be strange at the hotel. What he does, and there's security camera video of this that has been released and made public, and you can see. In fact, I used a still from it in the cover art for this episode. But what Blair does is, over a period of just under an hour, about 40 minutes, he kind of walks back and forth within the lobby of the hotel, doesn't approach the desk. He goes outside a few times, comes back in, wanders around the lobby, just looking odd, until finally approaching the desk and asks for the rates for a room. Is there a room available? And he ends up renting a room at the hotel for the night, paying cash. He gives them $100 bill.
Oh, the 90s.
Cash. And he doesn't even go up to the room, though. He rents it after lingering around there for 40 minutes, rents the room, and then just leaves.
Every aspect of this story is strange. And it just points to a very unfortunate mental health crisis. Yeah. Like, I'd love to know what he was thinking. He probably thought there was some sort of danger in the room.
Yeah, well, I have so many questions about this case, and that is one of them. One thing we know is he doesn't seem concerned about money. We heard about he bought the one-way ticket to Washington rather than the cheaper round trip. He pays at the hotel with $100 bill and doesn't take his change. And that's just weird. You don't, like, at a hotel, you're not like, yeah, keep the change, buddy. That's not how you tip at a hotel.
No. And to me, that paying for a hotel with cash is just such a foreign idea to me.
Well, again, it's a different world in 96. Yeah. They don't want cash now. They want your credit card. So if you steal the TV
lamp,
or whatever it is, yeah, they get their money.
If you open the mini bar, they can charge you $300.
So all of this at the hotel happens in the early evening of July 10th. Whatever ends Blair's life, whoever kills him, for whatever reason they kill him, it happens sometime between now and the next morning, July 11th, because an odd discovery is made early morning hours of July 11th. Two construction workers phone police because they think they see a partially naked homeless guy sleeping on their construction site. It's reported initially as a vagrant sleeping in the parking lot near the hotel, partially clothed. And that's what the police respond to. But that's not what's happening here.
No, and up until this very second, for some reason, when I was reading this in my mind, I pictured him in a car. But no, just the parking lot. Like, because he obviously didn't have the rental car, he's just there.
Yeah, and where he's found, it's a parking lot across there's like a highway in front of that hotel that he rented the room. This lot is on the other side of the highway. So he's found dead basically across the street from the hotel he had bought the room in, rented the room in. The police show up initially responding to calls of like a homeless guy sleeping in the parking lot. But what they find is Blair Adams, 32 years old, 5 days after withdrawing all of his money from the bank back in Canada, he is murdered, partially clothed. His pants are removed, his socks are off, his shoes, of course, are off, and his stuff is scattered around him. He had a fanny pack, The fanny pack's just thrown on the ground. This other bag he had is thrown on the ground. So it's like it's not like he just dropped in the spot. It almost looks, and to me it seems like he was probably thrown out of a passing car or something like that, because he's just kind of sprawled across the ground.
See, I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's what it would make sense to me, because it wasn't all in one spot. It was, it was him. Then 15 feet away was his fanny pack. His shoe is underneath him. One of his shoes is off to the side, but another one is kind of like under his head. It's described as he was found laying on one of his shoes, almost like it was a pillow, but it wasn't like he was sleeping on his shoe. It's just so happened that he landed on top of his shoe. But it's, whatever happened, it's, foul play is definitely involved. Like he was beat up,
but
partially naked.
But the weird part, this is all weird, but the especially weird part is that all of his thousands of dollars in Canadian, US, and German currency was like around him. And
his gold bars, because you hear of this guy roaming or wandering around the United States with thousands of dollars of cash, gold bars and stuff. You think, oh, he definitely just got himself robbed or something. But no, he had in his fanny pack, that was on the ground next to him, was a bunch of gold bars. It was another bag with, like $6,000-ish in cash, Canadian, American, and German currency. So it is an absolute bizarre scene. And it doesn't seem like robbery is a motive, because that stuff is there.
Right. It's just all so bizarre, and somehow gets more bizarre as things progress.
Yeah. And just one other thing that when we get into the theories of what may have happened, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. The investigators made a point to refer to his pants and socks as looking to have been removed by someone else, because they're all inside out.
Perhaps Blair was being followed. Perhaps he only thought so.
His pants were removed in a way not like someone would take their own pants off, but in a way that someone else would remove your pants from you in a pulling motion, where his pants were turned inside out. His socks were turned inside out, his shoes were off, and his shirt was ripped open.
I don't know. I need to think about this and maybe understand it better. But for whatever reason, my pants, when they're on the floor, it's always like one leg is inside out and the other one's regular. Something about the way I do it. That's how it ends up.
I was about to say, my pants are often inside out when I take them off myself. So.
Well, Blair's were inside out, and when we talk about theories, we'll see how that plays into things. But his actual cause of death after the autopsy is what's called septic shock. That has to do with getting like a hard enough blow to the stomach that your stomach ruptures. Is that what that is?
Well, you can get sepsis from like anything. Like you can get it from a kidney stone, or you can get it after you give birth.
Well, and I guess it can happen fast, because in his case, the cause of death was septic shock, but the reason he had the sepsis or septic shock is because his stomach was ruptured due to a blow. The theory was that it was either some kind of a club or a crowbar. Something hit him hard enough in the stomach to rupture your stomach, and that is a pretty big hit to the stomach if it does that. But he was also covered in other damage. He had defensive wounds on his hands. He had a severe blow to the head that, if not fatal, would have likely made him unconscious. Again, the theory was that he was hit with something small and thin and metal, like a crowbar or some type of a club. But Blair Adams had the living hell beat out of him, to the point that his stomach ruptured. And that is what killed him.
That part of the story is so horrific to me, because I can't imagine how hard that blow would have needed to be to rupture your stomach, and the pain.
Yeah.
And to go into septic shock so quickly between in 10 hours, because it was between 5:30 p.m. and 7:30 a.m. that this all happened. That happened really fast, and I cannot imagine the kind of pain that he was in.
Autopsy results also show that there were no drugs or alcohol in his system. The investigators believed that the crime may have been sexual in nature, I think a part of that it had to do with him being found partially unclothed, his pants and socks and stuff having been removed, but there was no DNA evidence to suggest something had happened to him. So you can use your imagination for what that may mean.
So unfortunately, my imagination did run away with me for this part, because I would like to know what that means. Was there other evidence of sexual assault other than just the pants? Like,
that's what I was wondering.
Are we talking about like object rape, or what's going on here?
Yeah,
whatever it was terrible. What a horrible way to die.
I can't imagine investigators would put it out there that a theory is that it was sexually motivated, if only because the pants had been removed.
Right.
But because your pants, if you don't have a good belt, your pants could fall off as you were getting beat up in this situation that leads to his...
Exactly.
So I think there must be more to it that hasn't come out as to what led them to suspect that. But what else it could have been is simply where this had happened. This is an interesting area that he ended up in, this hotel in Knoxville, Tennessee, because across the street from the hotel, there's like kind of like a gas station truck stop thing that is like a hotbed for prostitution in this area. Where he ended up and where he was murdered is a very active prostitution type situation playing out, in a lot of speculation is that Blair may have gotten in a car with somebody, perhaps related to sex work, and maybe they tried to rob him or something went wrong that led to this attack on him and him being thrown out of the car and dumped in this parking lot.
Which would make the most sense, but all of his belongings were there.
Yeah, but maybe it wasn't a robbery. Like we know that
right.
He's not making a lot of sense. He's being strange. Maybe he got in a car with somebody and it wasn't a robbery motivation. It was something he said or did made them kick the crap out of him and throw him out of the car where he died.
But if it's one thing about sex work or, work in general, you want money. So if you're going to kill someone, why not take what he's got?
Or at least open the bag up. But maybe they didn't want to. Maybe their fear is just get this guy out of here.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And there is no suspect. There's as far as evidence and stuff, the last people to see him really were the tow truck driver and the person working the front desk at the hotel. There were a couple kind of unverified sightings. One person thought they saw him talking to another man at this truck stop prostitution type area. And there is a drawing, a sketch of this guy that maybe he was talking with that's floating around, but that's not confirmed. Someone claimed around 3 a.m. they heard someone screaming in the area, but they thought it was a woman screaming, which, it could have been Blair being attacked, or it could have been someone associated with the attack on him screaming. But again, that's not determined to be related to him. And one last thing is he did have within his hand when they found his body, he had a long strand of hair, but they were never able to match that up with anybody through DNA. So that strand of hair is a mystery.
It's just nothing about this makes sense. Because, yeah, even if there was consensual sex with a prostitute or whoever, especially if it was a sex work type deal, I know he was acting weird and everything, but if a confrontation broke out or a scuffle, if you will, and they maybe even accidentally killed him, they'd still want their cash.
Yeah.
That would be that's why you work.
That's a good point. Money. Yeah, just to talk that out. If he gets in a car with somebody to purchase sex, something goes wrong and either the sex worker or a pimp type person, something goes wrong and they end up beating him up and attacking him and throwing him out. For him to get in the car, they know he at least has a couple $100 or whatever it costs in his pocket. So why wouldn't they open his pocket and then be like, oh my God, he has a bunch of gold bars and every jewelry and everything else.
Right.
But again, maybe they just got scared off and they just wanted to get him out of there and not get caught for murder, which is probably a wise choice. And in this case, they never got caught. So maybe it was the right decision. Without any other evidence of anything else, it seems to be the main theory is that what happened to Blair had something to do with the location he was at, because he was, again, found across the street from where he was last seen, and the hotel worker didn't kill him. So the only other thing really going on around there that would be high risk is all this sex work happening at the truck stop across the street.
See, and I think you're onto something with him getting thrown out of a car.
When you look at the scene, it looks like they opened the back door of the car as they drove by and just pushed him and threw his stuff out, because it's just scattered there. And he had his pants down, which if sex work was happening, I know you're an adult, Madeleine, and you have kids, so you can probably imagine why his pants were down in this car. It all lines up to me. But whatever it was, they never found anybody. They never caught anybody. No one was ever charged. There was never even like a specific suspect. One thing I think we can rule out is I don't think it's likely that these coworkers in Germany that he thought were after him ended up at finding him in Knoxville, Tennessee.
I was just going to ask, so sexual encounter gone wrong aside, because that's the only somewhat plausible theory, what else could have happened? Like, the German coworkers probably didn't track him down in Knoxville, Tennessee.
No.
But like, what else could have happened? Like, no one knew he was there. He had no ties to Knoxville, Tennessee. I was thinking, like, what if there was a 3 or 4 year old drug debt that he owed someone? But like, how would they find him?
Well, yeah, where he was, like, it makes no sense. So
No.
if someone was after him for, like, I don't know, a drug debt, or someone from Germany, let's say, that hated him so much on the job site that they came across the world to find him and kill him
In Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, they'd be at his mother's house in Surrey, BC, not wandering around the United States at these random truck stops and stuff.
Right.
His running from this delusional fear of being murdered put him at risk and led to him being murdered. If you just show up at some random truck stop where you have no connection to anything and you're just wandering around being disoriented, you know, the world's a dangerous place.
Yeah.
Cat Stevens said it best when he said, "Baby, it's a wild world." Somebody just...
It was a perfect storm of just very, very unfortunate events.
To me, what it is it's the story of somebody falling through the cracks, and within a period of 5 days, he fell through the crack and hit rock bottom, which is dead in a parking lot in Knoxville, Tennessee, for no reason.
Yeah.
No leads. This case is about as cold as it gets, despite media attention. Like, I didn't know this story, and I think that's because it's where the murder happened in the United States. It has been covered a lot, but it's more covered as an American story. This was actually featured on Unsolved Mysteries back in the 90s.
And yeah, I mean, if they can't figure it out, will anybody be able to?
Yeah, seriously. For anyone who's watched Unsolved Mysteries, you know they have a whole call center where they're taking tips like in real time and, you know, and cracking cases. But this one eluded even Unsolved Mysteries.
But, you know, it's been almost 30 years, 29 years since this happened. Wouldn't that be something if we could like resurrect this case on the internet, the big, beautiful internet? Someone knows something. Like there might be like a person or two that has just that teensy bit of information that like, so yeah, someone knows what happened, whether whoever did this is dead, they told someone, or multiple people were present, or even someone in, you know, Surrey has just that, maybe they think it's not important, but
maybe
yeah,
I don't think
know.
I don't think this, whatever happened, I don't think it has any connection to Surrey or anyone in Surrey. But you know, one thing that I think that would make this very hard to solve is if you're talking about a truck stop and sex work, you're talking about a lot of transient people that are moving around. More than one person did this. To beat him so bad that they ruptured his stomach, that wasn't one person who did that. I think multiple people were involved in this, but it's probably multiple people who are on the move. And yeah, I think this will be a really hard case to solve. And it will take someone coming forward with information, and probably the only people who know about this are the people that were involved. And I bet the people who were involved also were going through a dark patch of substance abuse and addiction and trafficking and all this other horrible stuff. So it is just like this cascade of misfortune all lands in that parking lot with Blair Adams, a 32-year-old guy from Canada, with his pants down, dead, with a ruptured stomach, surrounded by cash and gold bars and jewelry, which is just such a bizarre and puzzling end.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just it shouldn't have happened.
And it just, I think it reminds you to look after people. If you run into someone, be it a coworker, a friend, and they're saying strange stuff, people are struggling, and it's not always obvious. And I bet you a lot of people close to Blair are probably thinking like, oh shit, like,
oh yeah,
what could we have done?
If you see something, say something, because worst case scenario is nothing's wrong, and best case scenario is you help someone.
Yeah, but it's hard. If someone's 32, they're an adult, they're the foreman at your job site.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to make someone get help, but it's clear that he needed it. And what ends up happening to him is kind of like the worst case scenario for someone who doesn't get it, which is pretty dark. But I don't think we're going to solve this one tonight. So let's put a bow on it. But let's do more of these kinds of stories. Like, and I think for anyone out there listening, if you have a crime that you've heard of, that you followed a little bit, and you'd like to hear it covered in the Canadian Gothic, go to thecanadiangothic.com/contact and let us know, because we're open to recommendations for sure.
I think it would be really cool if you and I specifically could resurrect an old case and like get it solved.
It would be amazing. Yeah, it would. I don't know if this will be it though, because there's so little information. To resurrect this story would involve uncovering new information. And I don't think there is much. And I think that's why it's so baffling to investigators. And that's why it's gone on this long. It's, and for anyone out there listening, if you have a theory on what may have happened, or if there's any detail of the case that you think we missed, go to thecanadiangothic.com/contact and let us know, because I would like to know more about this story. And sadly, there's just not a lot there.
Or if you know someone in Knoxville that was around like 30 years ago, ask them if they know anything.
Yeah. I wonder if it was high profile. Like, being on Unsolved Mysteries is a big deal. And if you Google this case, you'll find a lot of articles about it, a lot of like true crime podcasts and other things, YouTube videos and stuff. There is a lot written and said about this case, but all of it, it's like there's just not a lot of information to dive deep into. There's enough to just show how much of a mystery it is. And yeah, it's just a sad story. 32 is young to, just fall off the edge like that. And that seems to be happening.
Your life is really just beginning. I thought 20s was like where it was at. Oh, no.
No.
Your 30s is much better.
Maybe once upon a time the 20s were, but 30s is really when you just got all the crap out of your system. And you're like, all right, now I'll settle down.
Yeah.
You're ready to do it.
Got a little bit more money, a little less energy, but, it all balances out.
I want to thank you for joining Madeline and I for this discussion. If you have any theories or opinions on this case, we'd love to hear from you. You can share it with us by commenting on the Canadian Gothic social media posts about this episode, or send us a voice memo at thecanadiangothic.com/contact. We're both excited to hear from you. But for now, I'm going to wrap this episode up. But before that, let me end with some thanks. First, a big thanks to Madeline for sharing another evening with me and with you, the listeners of the Canadian Gothic. I'd like to thank LJ from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides our intro and outro voiceovers, and Monty Data, who contributes the music for this show. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to every one of you listening to Canadian Gothic, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. And on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Claire, Angelia, and Joyce, thank you for going premium. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium and support the show at thecanadiangothic.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still help the show grow by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know they should listen. Your support is very much appreciated. And with all that said, until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
Thank you for listening to Canadian Gothic.
No one knows whether Blair Adams was running from a killer or if he was just running from himself.